All right, today we're going to tackle a really fundamental skill in English, how to compare things. Using words like bigger, faster, stronger, the best. By the end of this, you're going to know exactly how to use all of these words like a pro.
So let's just start with the main question, right? How do you actually talk about the difference between two things in English? It's something that trips a lot of learners up, but trust me, the logic behind it is way simpler than you think once you see it all laid out.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with the absolute basics, then we'll get into the rules for both short and long adjectives. After that, we'll hit those tricky exceptions that you just have to memorize, and finally, we'll put it all together to see how it works in the real world. Let's do this.
First up, the basics. And here's the most important thing to remember. Pretty much everything we're about to learn really just boils down to two main ideas, two main tools that you'll be using.
And here they are. First, you've got the comparative. This is what you use when you're comparing just two things, one against the other. Then you have the superlative. This is for comparing more than two things. You're picking one out of a whole group. So just remember, two items, comparative. A group, superlative. That's really the core idea right there.
All right, let's dive into our first set of rules. We're going to start with the easy ones, short adjectives. These are usually just one syllable long, like big or fast.
And what's so great about this is how simple the pattern is. For these short adjectives, the formula is almost perfect. If you're comparing two things, you just add ER to the end. To pick one thing out of a group, you add the at the beginning and EST at the end. So tall becomes taller and the tallest. Fast becomes faster and the fastest. It's a really nice, clean pattern, right?
And here's that rule in action. Edmund is taller than Fernand. See, we're just comparing two people, Edmund and Fernand. So we use that comparative form, taller. Simple.
But you knew there was a but coming, didn't you? Of course, English loves its little exceptions. While that and est rule is our base, there are a few little spelling tweaks we have to watch out for with these short adjectives. So the key is to just look at how the adjective ends. If it already ends in an E, you just add an R or est. If it ends in Y, you got to switch that Y to an I first and then add ER or EST. And for the last one, if the word ends in a consonant-vowel-consonant combo, you double that last letter. Let's see what that looks like. So here's our first spelling rule. The adjective is nice, and it already ends in an E. So we don't add another E, we just add the R. Mercedes is nicer than others. See? Clean and simple. And here's that consonant doubling rule we talked about. The word big goes consonant-vowel-consonant. B-I-G. So before we add ER, we have to double that last G. Prison was bigger than Edmund expected. This little detail is really key for getting the spelling right.
Okay, so we've got short adjectives down. Now let's switch gears and talk about long adjectives. The ones with two or more syllables. And I've got good news for you. The rule for these is actually even easier.
This is where things get really easy, because you don't have to change the adjective at all. You just leave it as is. Instead of adding something to the N, you just put a word in front of it. For comparing two things, you add more. To pick one out of a group, you add the most. So intelligent just becomes more intelligent and the most intelligent. No tricky spelling changes to worry about at all. For example, Abi Faria is more intelligent than Edmund. Intelligent is a long adjective, and we're comparing two people, so we just pop more right in front of it. Easy.
And to single out one person from the whole cast of characters, we use the superlative. Villefort is the most dangerous character. Here, the most tells us that out of everybody else, he is number one on the danger scale.
Okay, now for the really fun part, the rule breakers. These are what we call irregular adjectives. They don't follow any pattern at all. These are the ones you just kind of have to know. But the good news is, they're some of the most common words you'll ever use. So this is a really important slotted. These words just completely change. Good doesn't become gooder, that's not a word. It becomes better and the best. Bad becomes worse and the worst. This is one of those tables you'll probably want to come back to because these words are absolutely essential. And here's a perfect example of why knowing these is so important. Knowledge is better than wealth. You're going to hear and use better and best all the time. So remembering that they come from the word good is totally fundamental. And finally, let's just quickly look at the other little words that make these sentences work. When you're using a comparative, you almost always need the word than to connect the two things. For superlatives, you must have the word the in front. And a cool little trick, if you really want to emphasize a comparison, you can add words like much, far, or a lot before it, like saying someone is much taller.
All right, we've gone through all the rules, the spelling changes, and the exceptions. For this last part, let's just put everything together and look at some perfect examples of how this all works in practice.
Let's start with this one. Mercedes is the most loyal woman in the story. Okay, so loyal is a long adjective, right? And because we're picking her out from all the other women in the story, we use the superlative, the most loyal.
Now, how about an irregular one? Prison life was worse than freedom. Here, we're comparing two things, prison life and freedom, and the base adjective is bad. The correct comparative form isn't badder, it's worse.
And let's do one more, this time with a short adjective. Edmund becomes the richest man after finding the treasure. Rich is a short adjective, and since we're saying that out of all the men, he's at the very top, we use the richest.
So, there you have it. We've covered the essential rules for making comparisons in English. But this isn't just about grammar, right? This is about giving you the tools you need to describe the world around you with more detail and more precision. So, the real question I want to leave you with is, how are you going to use these rules to describe your world